I think we should for February. If we get October, we're satisfied with people. I mean, we won't.
Find out what the latest is, just want to know what else is available on this schedule. Maybe there's something available with the first week of December.
Okay. Whose schedule are you reading? It is.
Because it's tied to the Senate schedule.
You ready?
Ready, sir.
Call the September 20th meeting of Area Plan Commission to order. Mr. Burns, would you call the roll, please?
Jackson Bogan.
Present.
Larry Leverance.
Present.
Carla Snodgrass. Gary Schroeder.
Present.
Jerry Reynolds.
Present.
Greg Jones. Greg Jones. Bob Metzger. Diana Looper. Vicki Pearl. Vicki Pearl. Michelle Dennis.
Present.
Tom Murtaugh.
Present.
Perry Brown. Tracy Brown.
Present.
Jason Domkowski. Jason Domkowski. Lisa Dullum.
Here.
Kathy Parker.
Present.
Jody Hamilton.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you, sir. Briefing session.
Thank you. UZO Amendment 110, the Stockwell Overlay District, was tabled by the APC Ordinance Committee and will be discussed again at their October 4th meeting. Additionally, UZO Amendment number 111, an omnibus amendment, staff is recommending that it be continued for a month. We had a couple questions come up this morning, and this is originated with the request from our building commissioner. He wasn't available today to talk to about this, so rather than go forward with a couple questions, we're going to have that continued for 1 month. And then finally, all rezoning cases are set to go forward. However, with regard to case Z2905, Crossroads Engineers, they will need to have waived a certain amount of required notice in order to go forward tonight, and Mr. Burns can brief you further about that.
Yes, my understanding of the situation, and I'll let staff fill in any details that I omit, is that the legal notice in this case went out on day 19. It was supposed to go out on day 21. There's a procedure that's a certificate of mailing that was done on time, but the actual certified mail was not sent out. So we have a 2-day gap. Should have gone out 21 days before. It went out 19 days before. And so it's a notice requirement of our own rules that it be 21 days. However, because the state law is 10 days, you have the ability to waive that and to essentially suspend the rules and to allow this case to go forward despite the 2-day discrepancy. You cannot ever vary the state law. State law says 10, and if it was 9, you can't touch it. Here, because your minimum is 21 and the state law minimum is 10, you are free to do your own thing with your own rule. It's your rule. You get to suspend it if you'd like to. In order to suspend it, it would take a motion to suspend to allow the late filing and a second and a vote, and the vote would need to be by 2/3 majority since it's a suspension of the rules. 2/3 of this body is 12.
Discussion from the board. Go ahead, Carla.
So I just have a question. So they mailed it on time, but the post office just didn't mail it?
I believe they did not mail it on time. I believe they submitted the appropriate document, which is called a certificate of mailing. Again, details, please, but it didn't actually get mailed until 19 days out.
I believe they were 2 days late with the mailing, but it was also a certificate of mailing that they performed rather than a certified mail, which is different. Our understanding is that the spirit of the thing has been met. People are here. Everybody knows about it, and so we're comfortable with this potential waiver of notice. But they did accomplish 19 days mailing via certificate of mail, not certified mail. It accomplished what it was supposed to accomplish in our eyes. Certainly, if anybody is aggrieved, they can speak differently. But
And so really the standard that you would be given is whether or not there was substantial compliance is really the sort of the legal standard. If you believe it's substantial compliance with what your rules are at 19 out of 21, then you have the ability to make a motion to suspend the rules, and then again a second, and you'd need a vote that would be 12 of this body would have to be in favor of that suspension to make it effective.
Unless there's an objection, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
Okay, I move to suspend the rules and allow Z 2905 Crossroads Engineering PC R1 to I3 to be heard tonight.
Second.
I have a quick question.
Lisa?
If we vote to not suspend the rules, then that would be heard next month?
Right, it would have to come back next month.
And then everybody who was here would have to come, okay.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
One point of clarification, if we would vote yes, does that change it to that, does that set precedent for future?
No, it does not. You're free to do it or not any time the occasion comes up. It's up to you each time independently.
Thank you.
Can we do this with a voice vote, or?
You can do a voice vote unless there's a nay, and then I would ask for a roll call.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
I just agree with Lisa that if people are here to hear it tonight, I think we should go ahead and hear it.
Anything else? All right, I will do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries then. Thank you. We will go ahead and hear Crossroad tonight. Approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the August 16th, 2023 public hearing as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. New business.
I move to hear and vote on Resolution 2023-07.
Second.
Staff?
Okay, we're bringing two new forms for approval, the rezone petition and the notice to interested parties for subdivisions. They have a lot of improvements, they're more aesthetically pleasing, and we've made a lot of changes to reflect our new rules that we have in the bylaws. And so staff is recommending approval. And I'm here for any questions if anyone has any.
Okay, thank you. Any member of the audience wish to comment on this amendment? Questions from the board? Hearing none, you have a yellow ballot on that one.
We have a unanimous vote in favor.
Thank you. For the public hearing, let me read the meeting procedures for you. For those of you unfamiliar with our procedures, the Commission would like you to know the following. When we hear a request to subdivide land, we're only concerned as to whether the actual drawing showing the division into lots meets the technical standards of our ordinance. The question of appropriateness has already been determined. Anyone wishing to make comments or provide us with information regarding any subdivision petitions will be given the opportunity to do so. When we are hearing a request for a change in zoning, we're trying to determine if the new zone being requested and the uses allowed in that zone are appropriate to that property and supported by the comprehensive plan. With each case being heard, our staff will present its report. Then the person requesting the rezone will be given an opportunity to speak. Following that, those of you wishing to speak in favor of the rezone will be recognized, and then those of you who wish to oppose it will have a turn. This will be your only time to speak. The person requesting the action will be allowed a rebuttal. Plan Commission members will then ask questions and finally vote. Please limit your statements to no more than 5 minutes. We ask that you not repeat what others before you have already said. We are a 17-member body, and a majority of 17 is 9. Regardless of how many commissioners are actually present, at least 9 votes in favor or 9 votes against are required for action to be official. If fewer than 9 of us agree to either approve or disapprove an action, that case must be heard again next month. Our vote on a request to subdivide is final. Our vote on a request to rezone serves as a recommendation to the appropriate City Council, Town Council, or County Commissioners, who must ultimately decide on changes in zoning. When addressing the Commission, please state your name and address for the record. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. If you need to make a call, please step out of the room before using your phone. All exhibits presented to the Commission become the property of the Commission.
I move that there be incorporated into the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Plan Commission, the application and all documents filed therewith, the staff report and recommendations on the application be heard this evening, and responses from checkpoint agencies.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'm ready to hear the continuances.
I move to continue UZO Amendment 110, Stockwell Overlay District, and UZO Amendment 111, Omnibus Amendment, to the October 18th APC public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried.
I move to hear and vote on Resolution 2023-06, Dayton Land Use Plan.
Second.
Good evening, David Hill with the Area Plan Commission, here with the proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan. Specifically, this would be an update to the portion of the comprehensive plan that applies to the town of Dayton. This goes back starting really a couple of years. Last year, the town of Dayton, the town council, applied for and was awarded a grant from OCRA, which is the Office of County and Regional Affairs, state office that supplies grants for various planning initiatives, a lot of them for small towns. And they chose as the firm to lead their planning effort, Taylor Siefker Williams, who is the lead agency behind this effort. We became involved at the very beginning. In fact, we were in conversation with Jen, the town council president, I think even before the award was granted, and said we would like to be involved with this. We'd like to have a place on the steering committee, make sure that this effort meets certain benchmarks that we would like to see met to produce a viable amendment to the comprehensive plan involving public process and establishment of objectives, give us a narrative that's usable and readable, give us a land use plan that corresponds to our other land use plans. And it would be helpful, actually, in that we would have professional work on a plan, help us dig a little bit out of our backlog of planning efforts. And so they were agreeable to that, so we had a place at the table to help guide it a little bit. I use that term advisedly, but to help direct it to a viable product that we could bring and vouch for here tonight, to have it eventually adopted. And I will say that Taylor Seeker Williams did an excellent job on this, and I think the town did a good job putting it together as well. I'll give some limited remarks at the beginning, then turn it over to Scott with the design firm and Jen and maybe some other town representatives from Dayton to talk about it, and then leave it up to you for your vote. This replaces the 1997 or 96 Second Amendment to the adopted land use plan for Dayton and vicinity, which itself replaced a plan adopted 11 years before that. So it's kind of a long time coming. They're 27 years into this plan, and it had in many ways served its purpose, and I think that the town was ripe for an update, and they got a pretty good one. I want to talk about a couple things that might be of particular interest here, and that's, first of all, look at the planning area that was involved with this. This is the future land use map for the existing plan, the 1997 plan that is currently and has for 25-plus years served the town of Dayton. And you can see that the area stretches quite a bit beyond the actual town boundaries. I'm going to use the laser on this map right over here. The town itself is this sort of rectangular box here, but as is often the case for town plans, almost always the case, and was the case here and in Battleground and in most town plans, they sort of assert they assert recommendations, they provide land use recommendations outside their boundaries. In this instance, their effective planning area was bordered to the south by Wyandotte Road and all the way to the north, beyond Haggerty Lane up to 150 south. 65 is the boundary to the west, and Wildcat Creek is the boundary to the east. I want to compare that to what the future land use map is for this effort, and it's here. It's in many ways similar. We go down to Wyandotte again to the south, 65 to the west, Wildcat Creek to the east, but they pulled in their northern boundary in terms of their planning area down to Haggerty Lane, had been originally at 150 south. So it's actually a more constrained planning area than their original plan was. As we look at that, again, you can see that the town boundary is in this finer grain dotted line here. It's the actual corporate boundary of Dayton, and the planning area extends beyond it to include this area, this area, this area. All of the green recommends agricultural use. This kind of pinkish peaches color is what they're calling a highway interchange mixed use, which I'll allow Mr. Seifker to talk a little bit about later as he comes up. This is an even closer look at the effective area. Land use recommendations are in many ways similar to what the original plan was. This area has shifted with its recommendation. The previous plan really didn't recommend any industrial at all except for an area called commercial, research, light industry. Here they're actually recommending industrial, which presumably would be heavier industrial. And then they've got a hybrid district to the north, this pink district, which is highway interchange mixed use, which is a whole variety of proposed uses. There's a lot in here that we wouldn't necessarily include in our plans. There's conversation about town branding, town marketing, promotion, economic development, a lot of operational conversation about organizing festivals and things of that nature. We're a little bit more nuts and bolts, sticking to land use and things like that. So that's fine. I think that's a very worthy part of this plan as well, and it made its way into a lot of their objectives and goals. We did ask for this language to be included in the plan, recognizing that because there are recommendations that go outside the town's municipal borders, those recommendations could butt up against recommendations from the county plan, from a Lafayette plan, but we want to make sure that it's known down the road for whoever uses this plan for the next 10, 15, 20 years, whatever length of time it might be, that recommendations outside the corporate boundary do not supersede the recommendations of the existing plan, the plan with actual jurisdiction. And you may guess what we're talking about next, which is this area. This is known as the Carr property, recently annexed by the city of Lafayette. That annexation is being challenged by the town of Dayton, and that challenge is ongoing. Whether or not that area is included in this map is, in my opinion, not terribly important. At the end of the day, whoever wins the battle, whether it's Lafayette that the annexation stands as it's been completed now, or if Dayton is successful with their challenge, if Dayton is successful, then this is the portion of the comprehensive plan that would be regarded when decisions are made with regards to rezonings, land use petitions. If Dayton is not successful, then it will be, in fact, regarded as Lafayette's territory, and they will be free to plan that area for their own use if they choose that. I think that's all I have to say. Again, I think the inclusion of this language is helpful. This sort of really reflects general planning principles. It is not uncommon to have one plan for a town with a recommendation outside the town's corporate borders not be completely in congruence with the recommendation of a county plan or an adjoining town's plan. But it's the jurisdiction that is actually presiding that has the more important recommendation, if you will. So in this case, the plan, the recommendations of the Dayton plan would be subordinated. If it were to be challenged with regards to a county plan, any future planning efforts from Lafayette, what have you. I'll turn this over to the town of Dayton and to Scott Siefker, unless there are questions about what I've said so far. I will note, we've had one phone call about this during its process, speaking of our office, and one letter of remonstrance, an email of remonstrance, which came in this afternoon and is in the file, so I think you're able to take a look at that if you'd like. Any questions?
Does this doesn't have anything, if this is passed, anything with the conflict between the town of Dayton and the city? It will fall into that plan, and I guess would interrupt any of that legal.
This would have no bearing on the decision made regarding the annexation, no.
Okay.
No, this would hold no weight as far as that goes.
And David, the map you had for the recently annexed area, I was thinking that the annexation was actually less than that it actually is like half of that. Isn't that correct? The part that Lafayette, can you?
Yeah, it doesn't look, I don't think it's quite that large.
I think it just went over to that, from the interstate to the strip of land.
Okay, I pulled that from a legal, which I thought was right, but you would probably know better than I, so.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it, it looks like it's a little larger than, but I can't really tell.
I superimposed that.
Yeah,
that's not part of the plan. I just put that in there for talking.
I don't think it went over to Dayton Road.
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay.
How many acres were annexed would be the starting point? Can you calculate the acreage there, just to get a rough idea whether that's incorrect as it appears to be?
I can't. Again, I superimposed that, taken from a legal that I thought was the annexation property. So that's not part of the plan.
That would be more than that.
All right. 50 or 60 acres.
I bet you the people from Dayton will know the exact number. Any questions?
Okay.
I think Mr. Siefker, if you'd like to go next.
Good evening. Scott Siefker with Taylor Siefker Williams Design Group. And as David said, our firm was hired after a competitive request for proposals that was sent out by the town of Dayton once they received a planning and grant award from OCRA, the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, that funded the comprehensive planning effort for them. So what I have this evening is I'm going to walk through just a brief presentation in terms of a little bit about what's in the comprehensive plan. So I know the material in terms of links was sent out, I believe, as part of your packet information. It's been available online for public review for the last few weeks as well. So I do want to give a little bit of highlights in terms of the process that the community went through, because this was roughly a year-long process for the community that they initiated and undertook. Kind of what's in the plan in terms of some of the components, so you have a better understanding in terms of some of the items and topics that are discussed as part of the planning document, and then finally our next steps. So with that, yep, okay. Well, we have a little font, it looks like craziness, but the issues that I was covering right there is what I just mentioned. So I'll begin with a little bit in terms of the planning process overview. And fundamentally, when a community begins their comprehensive plan and what Dayton was undertaking, and as David mentioned, the last planning effort was quite old, and so for kind of doing something like this, it was a new experience or a new initiative for the community. And so fundamentally, when we spoke about the planning effort, it really talks about identifying where the community of Dayton is today, talking about where as a community do they want to go, where do they not want to go in terms of some trends or demographics or other kind of, if you will, things that were being impacted or influencing the community, and then finally articulating how do they want to get there. So the elements of the comprehensive plan, Indiana Code identifies when a community or a county or whatever jurisdictional body is undertaking a comprehensive plan, they identify a series of elements that must be in a comprehensive plan in state statute. That includes the community vision statement, future land use and development growth statements and map, transportation and utility impact information and map, and identification and discussion of community facilities. As was the case with Dayton that when it undertook this through OCRA, so the state agency then also provides, in terms of some of their grant requirements, a series of other plan elements or topics that a community or a municipality must also address. And so those are listed underneath the purplish blue column. And so we'll talk a little bit about those because those are additional elements that the comprehensive plan also addresses or covers. So collectively, the issues covered under kind of the code requirements as well as the OCRA planning grant requirements make up the document that is the comprehensive plan for the community. Our planning process was broken into three different phases. The first phase kind of being the background and documentation of kind of a snapshot of where the community is now. We moved into a visioning phase where we were able to discuss kind of goals and objectives broadly for the community, as well as some specific plan elements such as the future land use plan, transportation, community facilities, etc. And then finally, we moved into implementation, which took all of the goals and objectives that were identified as plan recommendations and identified roles, responsibilities, timelines, etc. Part of kind of a thread that ties all of those phases together is community engagement and participation, and there were a variety of opportunities and techniques that were facilitated throughout the year-long process to hopefully gather some community input and dialogue in addition to the steering committee that was established that helped guide the planning process as well. So a little bit about some of our kind of analysis and findings. Obviously, we did a physical condition assessment where kind of all the existing inventory of the community facilities, whether that was land use or transportation, mobility, environmental, et cetera, were all documented. We looked at the demographic and social economic data, and so there was a existing conditions analysis done and summarized in terms of some of those statistics and baseline. Kind of with some key takeaways were summarized as part of the comprehensive plan, again, to give a better understanding in terms of what is the sort of the status or the benchmark of the community today. As I mentioned, there were a series of public engagement or community engagement activities, and those ranged from the work of the steering committee that met regularly throughout the year-long process. There were a couple of different public open house or visioning sessions that were facilitated, some online surveys that were distributed, and so a variety of methods or techniques in terms of reaching the community at various key milestones in the planning process. Again, some of those informations were summarized as part of the public survey work or the online community survey work, and those were included as part of an appendix in the comprehensive plan in full. So if you'd like to kind of dive into that more, that information is included as part of the comprehensive plan document itself. In general, again, the plan outline is organized into sort of 4, if you will, major chapters or sections. And this is really organized and articulated by OKRA. So the planning grant kind of dictated, if you will, sort of how the document itself should be organized. And so our structure follows the OKRA planning guidelines. The beginning section is the executive summary. So if you look at the plan, that highlights, again, at a high level, just what the overall scope of the process was, the process, and some of the key findings. It moves into section 2, which covers the general background. So again, some of the summary of those existing conditions snapshot is all covered in that second chapter or that second section. The third chapter or third section discusses the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, their role and responsibilities. And then finally, the bulk of the plan is covered under section 4, which covers the 13, if you will, planning elements, as we call them, that, again, were identified in terms of the OKRA planning grant that we had to sort of organize and cover. And so there are recommendations and strategies underneath each one of those categories. We did organize those categories into sort of 3 like-minded or conceptual elements. So for the community, we talked about elements related to enhancing the outdoors. We talked about elements related to programming and promoting quality of life elements. And then finally, elements that supported or aided economic development and prosperity. When we look at the kind of the subject matter, each of the chapters are organized, or each of the sections of that chapter are organized the same, where they have kind of that introduction, they'll go through the goals, and then they'll go through the recommendations. So it doesn't matter if you're flipping to the agricultural section or you're flipping to the land use section, they're all organized in a similar like-minded fashion. So the land use, we'll walk through just at a high level some of the highlights of each of those sections. The land use being the first section. Again, the goals are articulated along with some of the policy objectives. You'll note that there are some prioritization in terms of thinking about moving some of the projects forward. When you kind of summarize all the input and data collection together and you end up with, a couple of hundred different comments of things, those all kind of get organized into a plan or a planning effort. But obviously some things A needs to move before B. And so sometimes we do need to look at some prioritization in terms of both a community resources from a financial or a capital campaign or capital standpoint, as well as a staff resource or capacity. And so you'll note that in each of the sections, some of the goals are all identified in terms of a prioritization. As David mentioned, the land use section does include the future land use map that he spoke about, and so that's included as part of the land use section. This Section 2 talks about the government and fiscal growth. So again, goals and objectives for that topic were identified in terms of government and fiscal capacity. Public facilities was the third section that was covered, and so items like development of services to utilities, infrastructure, those types of technology elements were all underneath the sort of the public services category. And again, in some instances, where appropriate, we try to augment the policy or the recommendations with some graphics. In the land use plan section, it's obviously map related. In this section, you can see when we're talking about some of the infrastructure and public facilities, graphics such as some typical cross-sections or other types of diagrams were utilized to help convey ideas or concepts in addition to the written narrative. Placemaking was the next category, and so this really had to do a lot with some of the quality of life elements in terms of, he mentioned some of the branding and wayfinding or signage, those kind of elements that the committee talked about. Those recommendations were included underneath the placemaking category. With a variety of goals and strategies addressed related to those. And once again, some graphics or illustrations that conceptualize how the community could begin to use some of that branding and identity throughout the community to elevate their identity and reinforce that identity were included and discussed. Economic development section certainly talked about kind of the growth of the promotion of an environment that promoted commercial, retail, and business sustainability and viability in the community. And so there were some goals and recommendations related to that included, as was housing. So residential development, workforce housing, senior housing, et cetera, were all elements that were discussed as part of the planning effort, and a variety of recommendations and key objectives related to housing are articulated as part of the plan effort. Transportation, one of the state code requirements that needs to be addressed, has its own section, and so things related to transportation, not only vehicular but multimodal, so pedestrian mobility, ADA accessibility, et cetera, those items were also included underneath the transportation category, and some associated maps and graphics related to the transportation initiatives were also included as part of that section. Agriculture was, again, a topic, one of the key plan elements from the OKRA guidelines. While there isn't any agricultural facility or fields within the actual town boundaries, obviously adjacent to that there was. So there was some, recommendations and discussion regarding kind of the preservation and promotion of that agricultural heritage and what that means for the community specifically. Natural resources was identified in terms of a watershed or other kind of elements that needed to be preserved or protected, and key objectives or steps in which the community can do to reinforce those goals and initiatives. Parks and open space, so parks and recreation, parks and open space. So again, another one of those quality of life type elements was included. And so things like programming, as well as potentially some new facilities, and conceptually how those could be arranged or identified in the community were discussed and talked about. And again, from the public input, this was something that was probably very popular and we heard a lot about in terms of park and recreation topics. And so it was something clearly that was a high level in terms of a desired use or desired need in the community. And so there are several goals and objectives that came out of those discussions with the community. Broadband access is a relatively new plan element that OKRA has added, and for the Dayton community, unlike many of the other communities that we have the opportunity to work with, Dayton was well set already in terms of some of the broadband discussion. So a lot of the broadband category in terms of the objectives and goals really related to continuing services and annual maintenance and review of those. Historic and archaeological, so cultural resources. So the state does want us to look at and document any cultural resources, and so the historic preservation district and area, as well as contributing buildings and what have you, were all documented and noted, and those are included as part of the plan, as are some goals related to some facade rehabilitation programs. So again, OKRA as an agency does offer some other, when we get to implementation, programs to help with those types of initiatives, and so we wanted to make sure that the plan was easily transferable as they move into implementation, potentially related to some of those, and so there were some suggestions and guidelines in the plan given to how that project or program could move forward. And then finally, hazard mitigation. The state asked us to address or look at if there are any sort of influencing or factors related to hazardous materials, waste, what have you. In this case, Dayton did not have anything identified that really qualified under that. So for our discussion with hazard mitigation, it was more of a discussion and recommendations related to emergency preparedness and making sure that in terms of the community readiness and levels were identified and routinely supported. So that's kind of the high-level snapshot of what's all articulated and kind of the reasonings behind what's included in the planning effort. The town, as I said, has been working on this for on and off the past year. Last month, they had their public hearing where a similar presentation was made and went through the kind of the discussion. There were a few comments at that time. David mentioned a couple of other comments. After that hearing that were submitted, those have been addressed and included as part of the plan that's presented here this evening and moving forward. So those have been incorporated. Obviously, we're having a presentation in terms of the hearing with the Area Plan Commission this evening, and then either into this month or next month, what have you, in terms of as their agenda allows, it would then return to the town for their adoption proceedings as well. So that's kind of the follow-up steps. The state has reviewed this and per the grant requirements, and they've certainly given their approval with no comments actually on the draft that was submitted. So from their standpoint, they have also signed off on it. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of the process, a summary of what's included and the upcoming next steps. So I appreciate your time here in a few minutes to highlight what the community of Dayton has been working on, and I guess if there's questions or others in terms of kind of the next steps, I can certainly be around to address or answer those. Okay. Thank you,
sir. Does any member of the audience have any comment on this resolution?
Hi, Jen Monego, 625 Harrison Circle in the lovely town of Dayton. I serve as our council president, and I also had the pleasure of serving on our steering committee. And Mr. Carr can clarify this as well, but the annexation area that Mr. Murtaugh was talking about, he is correct. It wasn't that entire area. It's just 97 acres, just kind of halfway. But I don't think that should have any bearing on whether you vote yes or no to include this in your Tippecanoe County Comprehensive Plan. This was a plan that was put together by the people of Dayton. Lots of open discussions, public meetings, online surveys. We got as many people involved as we could. We put it on our website. We put it on our Facebook page. We hung signs in the town hall windows. We put it on the bottom of the utility bills or hanging on the utility office to get as many people involved as we could, because we wanted to hear from the people what the people in and around Dayton wanted for the town of Dayton. So I think that having David as part of the steering committee, not only were we okay with that, but we loved that. He brought a lot to it and had a lot of great comments, so we appreciate him being on that. I think they covered basically everything, but I just hope that you will vote yes to include this in your comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
Guthrie Carr, 209 Pawnee Drive, West Lafayette. Larry, could I ask some questions of the planner before I comment, or is that possible? I just have a couple about what I think might be errors in the plan, and so it's
Go ahead.
typical. Could you go to page 49 in the plan, please? Could you put 49 up there? You guys? Computer? While we're waiting, I represent my family, and we're landowners in the town of Dayton, and that's one of the reasons that I'm here this evening. Is 49 with the land use plan?
Okay.
Or he could have it off. They can't get this together. He can talk off.
Okay.
So I guess it will be 45 now.
Can you, if you
Can I just say that part of the land use legend, I can't determine what the designation of part of one of my parcels is. It has, I don't see it on the legend. It's zoned as business right now, and there's commercial next to it, but part of the parcel has no designation that I can identify right now. So that's one of my questions. You want to look at it? Maybe you can clarify that?
Can you have this, let's do this as a sidebar conversation here, get that worked out,
Okay.
and then if you want to come back.
My second question, I think will be quicker. When you did this, did you consider the 2030 transportation plan of the county?
There was existing previous plans and studies, a range of things, all the way back to the previous comprehensive plan, transportation plans, the historic preservation designation, the plans related to that. So all of that was, a high-level system review for the baseline, yes.
But the Yost Road extension and the 2030 transportation plan is not on this, on page 45. It's omitted, right?
So some of the, again, in terms of the new
That-
recommendations from transportation, I have that in front of me.
Well, you can come on over here and look at it if you like.
Mr. Carr, he will
Yeah.
get a chance to rebut if you have a question.
Well, I guess I would say that I would recommend that you table this until we can clarify why the Yost Road extension from the 2030 transportation plan is not included, and clarify what the land use plan is for certain parcels that are not currently noted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Hi, my name is Mark Burmester. I'm the president of the Redevelopment Commission, and I'm also on the town board. I guess I want to say that I'd like to thank Mr. Hiddle for being part of this process. And of course, they also said that the state has already signed off on this. So I think, also, the staff says that this is a well-crafted document. So this has been thoroughly looked at by the staff. They've come to the recommendation for you folks to approve this, and I would urge you to pass this tonight, and so we can get moving on with things. And did you see how thick that thing was? There was a lot of work went into this planning, a lot of participation from a lot of people in the town, and it's been kind of vital for our town so we can move on. And so I respectfully ask you to pass this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
For those that have spoken, if you haven't signed in, please come up to the table and do so.
Cindy Marsh, 749 Shady Lane in Dayton. And I was also on the steering committee, and I represented local business and also the Dayton Area Community Coalition. And I have been a town volunteer for, well, I videoed every meeting for 8 years and have attended meetings for long before that. So I can answer the Yost Drive question, I think, in a way that would be agreeable to those that have official positions. And that is, Yost Drive is no longer factor. That's why it's not included in there. The reason that we got the comprehensive plan and the grant for it was because Dayton had asked for an updated version of the land use plan for at least the past two councils before this council came on, maybe longer. And even in 2018, the commissioners approved the area plan moving forward with the land use plan for Dayton, an updated land use plan. But in spite of all that, for some reason, we never got one. And so the fact that it had never been updated was actually used against us in zoning some of that land, Mr. Carr's land, against the wishes of the town of Dayton. But the reasoning was because we didn't have an updated land use plan. And so now we do. The town wants it, the town needs it. Yost Drive is not in the picture. And I respectfully request that you pass this tonight and add it to the county's land use plan.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience?
I'm Ron Kohler, and I've been up on the town council for 8 years and the town clerk for 12 years, so I've been up there 20 years, lived in Dayton for 50, and this is exactly what we need. It's what everybody's talked about since the 90s. It's a good plan. We planned it well and had a lot of participation. Yost Drive is not included because we were a board put on there because people didn't want Yost Drive. It has nothing to do with it. But we really need this plan to help us to do our future and everything. So, thank you. Hope you pass.
Any other comments? Any response to the questions that were raised from planner or from Mr. Hiddle?
I will say that there is a transportation section in this plan. It's very Spartan. It's not prescriptive at all with regards to roadways, expansion of streets, contraction of streets, removal, addition, anything like that. It's all about trails and streetscapes, wayfinding signage, more micro events along streetscapes. So this has no impact on any of the adopted transportation plans. It has no impact on the thoroughfare plan. It doesn't aspire to. Where it talks about transportation, it's just about the minor details, again, trails, sidewalks, things like that.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Not so much a question, just a comment. I'm just, I think it is really good to add that statement in that Mr. Hiddle pointed out. So I'm glad to see that that's in there. Because however that lawsuit plays out, plus, there's additional ground outside of the town, that obviously is, could be potential growth area for Dayton in the future, or maybe not. So I'm glad to see that language added.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, you have a yellow ballot.
We have a unanimous ballot in favor.
Thank you.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2899, Aaron Walker, R1U to R2U.
Second.
Let staff present first.
Okay, Austin Hammerly here again. Petitioner Aaron Walker is requesting a rezone of this property from R1U to R2U. Currently, it is configured where the existing house, which is over 100 years old, is going across both lot lines. Petitioner is proposing to reconfigure the lot line so that the house sits on its own lot, and then the garage and the proposed duplexes he's proposing go on the other lot. Around the property, there's the church across the street, and then there's just single-family houses all around. Staff is recommending approval because it is by the church, and there is some R2U zoning in the area further to the northwest, and so we feel that it would be a good place to densify a little bit more and infill. I'm around for any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you. Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Good evening. Brad Neely with Riley, Teeter and Schreier, here with Petitioner Aaron Walker.
Can you turn your microphone on, please? There
Sorry.
you go.
Brad Neely with Riley, Teeter and Schreier, here for Petitioner Aaron Walker. This property does include 2 lots. The lots contain a single-family dwelling as well as a detached garage. Petitioner intends to convert that detached garage to a duplex. Property is currently zoned R1U. Petitioner requests to rezone that property to R2U to permit single-family use as well as duplexes. R2U is appropriate in the area, as staff stated. There's numerous R2U zoning to the northeast, just about 3 blocks from this property. Permitting this rezone would allow full use of both lots. It would allow for revitalization of the area as well as additional housing. We've received positive recommendation from staff. Respectfully request your approval and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition?
I could not hear him. What are you asking us about right now?
I'm sorry?
I did not.
Can you step to the microphone, please?
She can't hear, and I think that was the major.
I think.
She's not sure what you were asking.
All right.
I did not hear what the gentleman just said, so I'm wondering what you're asking the audience.
Asking if there is anyone wishing to speak in favor or in opposition to this petition.
And which issue is this?
This is Z2899, Aaron Walker, on 21st Street and Monon.
That's not us, is it? Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak? Questions from the board? Hearing none, you have a yellow ballot, please.
Yes. Thank you.
We have a unanimous ballot for approval.
Thank you.
I move to hear and vote on Z2902, K-Bay East Group LLC, Toby and Nathan Kimura, Parkside Flats PD, R2U to PDRS.
I second.
Okay, moving over to the Columbian Park neighborhood.
We have a site, as you can see from the zoning. It's quite a patchwork quilt of zones. The old home hospital site's been MRU for many, many years, obviously is redeveloped. We have a lot of spot commercial zoning, NB and MBU scattered around, and then a lot of R1U, R2U, and some R1B in the vicinity as well, and a few very small spots of multifamily zoning. Zooming in closer to the site, it's bounded by Scott Street, Sherman Street, and Sheridan. The property, I guess in the lower left lot, the most extreme southern part of the lot there, developed as a matter of right under duplex zoning regulations. That project is done. The remaining lots are what this PD is concerned with. The proposal, that total acreage, that excluding the duplex lot, is about 0.75. The proposal is a 20-unit multifamily development that it's divided up. It's not a single building, it's multiple buildings, into 5 fourplex units. So there's sort of 5 two-story buildings. Each building has 4 units each. It's a very targeted infill site. It makes use of all the existing infrastructure, the existing curb, gutter, sidewalk, the street grids, very well established here, as well as the public alley in the back. It's obviously making use of that for both trash service and vehicular parking. Each building will have parking spaces allotted to it for those units. So everything's sort of out of sight. It's making use of the alley. Some new street trees obviously are going to be planted for this project around the perimeter. The units themselves are 2 bedrooms and fairly spacious for the size. And they're built to look like 2-story homes. From the street, that's how they'll read. The units in the back facing the alley will largely be invisible. So this front disposition that you see here, the front elevation, is what you're primarily going to see from Scott Street. So it's a very unique effort. We've been in discussions with them for some time remotely from Hawaii. The ownership group is from there. So, but we favor this project. It does bring multifamily, but it, to a certain extent, hides it in using just kind of standard urban form of kind of the duplex type unit. And that's really what they're going for. So by dividing them up into these multiple buildings, blending in with the largely single-family duplex environment that's in Columbian Park, this is a good fit in our opinion. So we are recommending approval with the kind of standard recommendations for plan development in this area. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Yes, good evening. Chris Shellman of Gutwein Law, 250 Main Street, here on behalf of K-Bay East Group LLC, which is owned by Toby and Nathan Kimura. As Mr. O'Gara stated, this is the culmination of a long process, multi-year process, since they acquired the properties 5-6 years ago. There's been a couple iterations and potentially even the initiation of a couple previous requests. However, this is the least dense, and in working with the city, you can see the kind of creative layout, which is intended to go along with the wonderfully refurbished Columbian Park. The goal is to maintain a craftsman-oriented style that looks like a regular home, and essentially takes the same footprint as the duplex that they constructed on the, I get my directions messed up there, but on the south side of Scott Street. So these units are going to be, high-level construction, hardy board materials, and in fact, in the plan development zoning, the city engineer's office approves the ultimate construction materials as well as the colors to make sure that they fit the style and neighborhood feel that exists along Columbian Park. The development, as Mr. O'Gara said, will include these 4-plex units, which, while the owners plan to keep and hold it for a long-term investment, it does allow the opportunity for them to be owner-occupied at some point in the future. Being a less than 4-unit structure allows you to qualify for a traditional mortgage. So one owner could turn and buy their unit and rent out the others. The anticipated rents are going to be market rate rents and commensurate with the high-quality finishes that they plan on installing. We'd be happy to answer any specific questions, but ultimately request the approval, a recommendation of approval from this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Questions from the board? You have a yellow ballot.
We have a unanimous ballot for approval.
Thank you.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2904, Dustin Zufall, OR to GB.
Second.
Okay, moving over into West Lafayette in the Purdue Research Park. We have a site here on the corner of Henschel and looks like Kent. The site's kind of in the heart of the OR portion of the research park, office research, as opposed to the heavy end industry further to the north. Obviously, we have some large multifamily areas that kind of surround the site. A few spot zones of commercial zoning in the research park that have been approved over the years up near Cal Bearer are kind of the more recent rezone petitions in this immediate area. Obviously, we have a lot of general business along the Sagamore Parkway. As you can see, not much going on with the site. The proposal is for a hotel. I believe Holiday Inn Express is the brand. Given its adjacencies, there would be no buffer yard requirement if the property is rezoned in this case. The city was interested in having some use restrictions, so not a full anything goes GB zone, and so a commitment has been filed with this petition. And the petitioner has worked with the city engineer's office to kind of do some series of strike-throughs about things the city would not like to see on this site in the event that either the hotel never materializes or it comes down one day and something else is put in its place. So the city staff is pleased with the result of the commitment, so staff is certainly behind it as well. So given all of that, we feel a hotel use in the heart of the research park, where there's lots of comings and goings, and lodging is definitely needed. This is a good fit for the city. So we are recommending approval with the commitment.
Thank you, Ryan. This petitioner or petitioner's representative, spit it out. Does the petitioner or the petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Good evening. I'm Pete Gensick with Gensick Engineering. I'm the civil engineer that will be working on the site design if we can get this approved this evening. Yeah, they did a great job. He kind of stole all the stuff that I prepared to say, so well done. Nice presentation. Yeah, this site looks like it has a great potential for a hotel with the business in that, in the research park and the commercial development along the Sagamore Parkway there, and proximity to the campus. But mostly just want to bring a little show and tell, show you the The site, we've been working with planning in both the Area Plan Commission and the building department in West Lafayette. And it looks that we'll have no trouble developing this site with the required parking and landscaping requirements to meet standards, just a basic hotel with the parking wrapped around it and lots of landscaping. And so that's the general gist of how we'll develop the site. And then here's an elevation of the building. Holiday Inns are mid-scale hotels that, accommodate business travelers well and people staying in town for a few days to visit and go to the campus. So with that, I'd just ask that you approve this rezoning this evening so we can move forward with the hotel with the thought of starting construction next year and then completing it by the next year. So.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Any questions from the board? Okay, please note you have 2 ballots on this. One ballot will be for commitment and one ballot will be for the rezone.
Just want to write commitment across the top.
Yeah, just somewhere write commitment and rezone on there.
I'm not sure, but I got that. They do need to write on it.
You do, yeah. You got it?
Write commitment, please.
Commitment.
There you go. All right. Commitment. Rezone.
Commitment, rezone. Be nice.
Maybe someday we can. Yeah, I agree with you. We could do this for free. That's interesting.
While Ryan's doing that, the same is true of the next one as well. So you'll have 2 ballots on it as well.
No, there it is. Is it written on the first one? I didn't see the first ballot. It just went up. Did they have it written?
I wrote them.
You wrote them.
You fill out the ballot.
No, good point. I didn't know, but they could.
You could.
Public meetings. I don't do it.
You do this long enough, we'll teach you how this works.
Good.
We have a unanimous ballot for both the commitment and rezone.
Thank you.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2905, Crossroads Engineering PC, R1 to I3.
Second.
Thank you. For your last case of the night, you have a rezoning request. Petitioner is Crossroads Engineers, and they are requesting the rezoning of a 30-acre site from R1, single-family residential, to I3, which is heavy industrial. Property is located, you see it on the map there, it's the northeast corner of County Road 100 West and County Road 275 south, that is State Road 231, you see winding along to its east. It doesn't adjoin 231. There is a property, a slim property between it and 231, but it's pretty close to its intersection there. This is an overhead view. The property is unimproved. It's been used for crop production for a good long time. A closer look, you can see the narrow property to its right, which is currently used as kind of a catch-all dump for building materials, natural materials. I think it's been considered by the city of Lafayette as grandfathered, legally established, non-conforming. To the west, you can see that there's neighborhood. It's a neighborhood. It's a residential area with maybe 8 to 10 homes immediately adjoining to the west, and then more beyond that, and then still more homes on 275 on both sides of it to the north and the south as you go west of the property. Petitioner submitted this site plan. This is a rezoning, so there's no obligation for a site plan, and they're not obligated to this site plan unless they say they're obligated to it, but this is what they're proposing to do. So for the property, the subject property, they've divided it into two 15-acre halves. The west half there, which is the purplish one, would be the actual concrete plant where the fabricator would be, as well as plenty of maneuvering area for trucks, offloading, onloading, and then a very slight bermed area to the south, and then a 20-foot buffering area to the west. And then to the right would be reserved for recycling, stockpiling, and crushing. Both of those are 15 acres. You can see that they would both have detention ponds at their northern edge. Further north of that, you see the blue zone, which is another 10 acres between this subject site and the church, which would not be rezoned, so it's not a part of this petition. So the request is the 30 acres you see there divided into two 15-half activity zones, if you will. Staff's concern lie with the proximity of this particular use to established residential, which is to the west. So this is looking along 275 over the subject site, which again is currently used agriculturally, at the houses along 100. So you see 3 or 4 of them there, and they continue north directly on the other side of the site. And then this is an aerial view where you get a better look of the size of the neighborhood to the west. This is actually tilted, so north is to your right, and you're looking along 275 westward here. So the other side of 100 is where the bulk of the houses are. Again, it's an older, established neighborhood, been there for quite some time, and not showing any sign of going away anytime soon. Another look, it would be a pretty significant amount of truck traffic involved with this site. If it were to go west, it would go past an even denser area, mobile home park to the south here with a lot of mobile homes. And then as you can see, the neighborhood itself continues, and it's relatively dense for this area. So there's a good number of long-time established residential homes that would be impacted by this particular use. If you look at, again, the zoning map, you can see that this is not the norm. Everything that's yellow, one shade of yellow or another, is residential zoning or agricultural zoning. And the only industrial zoning that you see is this little bit up here that's hugging State Road 25. Is that 25? Yeah. And these are incremental I-3 zones that have come online over the past 20 years, each of them relatively small, and again, each of them right next to a major artery, so really significantly different from this one. In fact, the largest of those industrial zoning lots is this one, and it's a little bit north of the subject site. It's a excavation contractor, and it's just over 4 acres. So that was rezoned to I-3 some time ago. So it serves, if there is any precedent, as the only precedent really for industrial zoning in this area. And again, it's by orders of magnitude a bit smaller than the subject site. So Staff's concern is that you're locating I-3, which is the heaviest industrial use, immediately adjacent to very well-established R1, which is the least intense residential use, and they're just not meant to be together. If this site were to be used for a lesser intense industrial use, and if it were to provide like really significant buffering to the west, we're talking bermed, heavily landscaped yards, that might be something worth considering. But here you have a pretty raw I-3 use, pretty unfettered and uninhibited, in terms of its ability to impact the western adjoiners. And so staff is not supportive of this request and would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, David. Does a petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Good evening. Michael Kahlberg, Crossroad Engineers, 115 North 17th Avenue, Beech Grove, Indiana, 46105. I'm also joined by Willie Hall, Crossroad Engineers, and Calvin Kingery and Miranda Herbert with Irving Materials Incorporated. So we're here to discuss rezoning position Z2905, and I'll kind of, just be respectful of your time, I'll kind of zip through a couple of slides that David had already covered. And just to briefly touch on this, like David had said, this is our preliminary site plan, conceptual rezoning exhibit. So, we're here seeking recommendation for approval of the rezone of the southern 30 acres of the 40-acre site. This kind of shows the proposed rezone. Like he said, the 15 acres in the west is going to be for ready-mix concrete plant. The 15 acres to the east is going to be for stockpiling, crushing, and recycling. And the 10 acres to the north are going to remain R1. Associated with this petition, we included some proposed commitments. One of those commitments is to install that 20-foot buffer yard, Type B buffer yard along that western property line on the east side of 100 West. I believe that Dave made a comment about potentially doing some heavier berming or buffering, and I think that can be conversations that can be had if a wider buffer yard is desired or additional plantings or berming is desired along that western property line there adjacent to the residential. The other commitments that were included in this were just committing to the specific uses for those two 15-acre properties, being the west one being ready-mix concrete use only, and the east one being the recycling, crushing, and stockpiling use. We also have some, I guess, unofficial commitments, if you want to call them that. One of them being a single point of access to the sites off of West 275 South. So this is only going to be off 275 South. There's going to be no proposed accesses off of 100 West. So this is virtually going to change, no change in traffic pattern or volume along 100 West. It's beneficial because it's closest to 231, where virtually all the truck traffic that's going to be generated from this site is going to be using 231. Virtually none of it is going to be heading to the west from this one here. So to jump into the criteria decisions, understanding considerations that the Commission is going to make and reviewing the staff report, this rezoning request is consistent with the land uses that are in the area and the character of the area. There might not be specific zoning, massive amounts of zoning that match, but several uses are there that do match what we're proposing with this petition here. The rezoning request is consistent with rezones that have occurred in the area that are nearby to this site, and specifically from R1 to I3, which is what we're proposing here as well. They've occurred and been permitted and approved within the past 20 years, and one of them as recent as 2017. One note is that the current comprehensive plan is from 1981, and we would suggest that in an update to that comp plan would likely suggest a different future land use area for this area that would be similar to the current petition and the current uses that are already there. So this is a map of the existing area, and just to kind of point out some of the uses that are similar to what we're being proposed here. Up to the north is some existing I-3. It was this area that was rezoned from R1 to I-3 in 1999 and 2017. This area is also adjacent to the R1 district and residential uses as well. These are used for manufacturing and contractor uses, similar industrial uses to what we're proposing here. The church immediately to the north, that's an area that's likely not going to be redeveloped as residential. And then the industrial type uses that are also near to the site. Immediately to the east is that existing stockpile recycling crushing use that's occurring. That's the same use that's going to be on the east half of the 30 acres that we're proposing to be rezoned here. There's also an existing cell tower to the southeast there, and an existing quarry use to the south of our site on the south side of 275. So there's a number of uses here that do in fact match the industrial types that we have. Looking at the current conditions of the site, this request is consistent with the land uses that are in the area and the development direction of the area that's already occurred. This is undeveloped ground, it's ready for improvement, and it's surrounded by already improved properties. So the site it has a desirable use to be industrial here because it's consistent, again, with those rezones and the land uses that are around here with the quarry, the stockpile, the cell tower, the contractor manufacturer uses that we've already addressed and pointed out here. It does allow uses that support further development in the community, and it will act as a companion use to the quarry to the south, as well as to the recycling and stockpiling use that's immediately to the east of the site here. The site also has good accessibility with 231 essentially adjacent to the site, and 25 right there as well. There's also close proximity to railroad. Those are just maps to show those proximities there. Regarding property values, this is a typical scenario. IMI has a lot of concrete plants all around the state where they're located in areas with similar adjacent land uses here. They're also committing to putting in a voluntary buffer yard, that 20-foot buffer yard along the west property line there on the east side of 100. Voluntarily committing to doing that to provide some buffering and screening from the residential there. On the site plan, the concrete plant itself has been pushed as far to the east as possible to allow for proper truck maneuverability for the site to operate appropriately there, to kind of get at that as maximum separation as possible for that. And then again, to point out to the one point of access along 275 West, that's not going to produce any changes in volume or traffic patterns to 100 there as well. In addition to the buffer yard screening, shielded lighting is going to be in there, improved drainage with water quantity and quality, and of course compliance with all local and state regulations and permitting is going to be there. Again, the use here is compatible with the current uses that are in the area and the character of the area here. And furthermore, concrete production it's a demand-driven business, so it's going to help promote growth and investments in Tippecanoe County and the city of Lafayette. To piggyback off of that, again, this use is consistent with those current uses that are in the area, and it'll companion that existing quarry and the adjacent stockpile recycling site that's there. This request to rezone from R1 to I3 is consistent with previous rezones that have went from R1 to I3 that have been approved in the near vicinity in the past. And it's also going to provide investment in the area, promote growth and development by providing material for developments within the county and the city. So in reviewing the staff report and some of the concerns that were brought up from the neighboring community, we just wanted to touch on a couple of items here. So the first one being access. Again, we're proposing only a single point access off of West 275 South there. So that will serve both the concrete and the recycling sites there. Just the one drive, nothing off of 100 there, so no change to those traffic patterns there. In regards to screening and visibility and buffering there, the required buffering is going to be produced along the north and the east property lines there. The voluntary additional 20-foot buffer yards being proposed within that commitment along the west
there to help provide some of that screening and buffering there. And then we also have some additional berming along 275 South on the south part of the property as well. For road traffic impacts, any improvements to West 275 South that are required will be installed with coordination from engineering for the City of Lafayette and any required traffic studies that are performed. Like I said earlier, lighting will be shielded and installed per the county and city requirements. Dust control, any drives, truck maneuvering areas, paths, parking areas, that's all going to be hard surfaces, so that's going to limit dust. Watering will be performed as necessary for any stockpiles. Truck wash-down areas are going to be installed and implemented for operations. New dust collectors are going to be installed as well. Also, the single-point access of the drive-off 275 also helps with that because it's a small area. It can be maintained and cleaned instead of having multiple access points. One item that I don't have on here that I wanted to touch on was noise. I think the attempts were made with pushing the plant separation as far east as possible onto the site to allow for proper maneuverability. That will help mitigate some of the noise, and then screening and buffering as well will help aid in that too. So air quality, so concrete plants, they're all required to obtain an IDEM air quality prior to development, and they need to continue to meet all of IDEM's air quality requirements throughout their ongoing permit through IDEM. In regards to water quality, detention and water quality facilities will be designed and installed per Lafayette stormwater standards, and those discharges will be regulated by IDEM as well. The plant that's going to be installed it's going to be a brand new plant. It's not going to be an existing plant that's moved in here. And then the final note in regards to cementitious materials, so those materials will be delivered and transported and stored on site in appropriate containment units. And I just want to be clear that cementitious materials is not going to be manufactured or produced here on site. This is a ready-mix concrete plant, not a cement production plant. So we just wanted to make that distinction there. With that, I will take any questions, or do you guys want to speak?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening. My name is Mary Holzhauer. I am here because I am very concerned about this project that he has just presented, which is located directly in my backyard. My property and my husband's backs up to 231. Right across the road would be this cement plant and recycling. If allowed to go forward, which is across the road, it will end a beautiful, lovely subdivision. This engineering company located in Beech Grove, Indiana, will come in here and without regard to any of us who live here, they will proceed to ruin the lives of us who do live here. The value of our homes will be drastically reduced if we can even sell them at all. And for those involved, for us who are involved in this, where will we go? Who will buy our homes? A lot of us are senior citizens with medical problems. We cannot live with this. And for the last year over there, the noise has never stopped. They're running trucks constantly, digging huge holes, building large mounds of cement or soil that they pull up from the ground to make the holes. They're big mountainous soil. So my questions are, One, what are we thinking to ever let such a project get this far? Two, what are your suggestions to those of us who live in the middle of this? And three, and most importantly, can we move this project to your backyard? Because that's where it would be for me, right in my backyard. Please think about this. Think about the residents in the community. We are tax-paying, voting residents who live in the middle of this project. We want to let you know we do not want the project. Please vote no on this proposal and stop the madness. We request that the voting on this project will be done in public on a roll call vote so that the citizens involved who are here this evening can know exactly how each and every one of you have voted on this matter. Further, I would like to know myself where I could pick up a copy of the minutes, the published minutes of this meeting. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. I hope you will consider that this is not a project for a residential area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Is this in the city limits? Pardon? Is this in the city limits? I can't. Is this in the city limits? I don't know. David, the question is this within the city limits?
It is within the city limits of Lafayette.
Of Lafayette, okay.
Shadeland borders immediately to the west.
Okay, very good, thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Gabriel Dice, and I own property along South 100 West. I wish to speak opposing this motion. I feel that a lot of questions have been addressed but not sufficiently answered, assuring me that something won't happen that anyone could clearly see isn't a reassurance, especially when staff are urging denial under similar but not the same conclusions to me. I caution and urge that the area is currently zoned for residential and it's surrounded by residential homes. This rezoning would destroy these homes while destroying the health of the families who reside around it. I'm already aware of several people who wish to remain anonymous that have pre-existing respiratory issues. On a personal note, within my area of South 100 West alone, I have a 14-year-old sister who could be exposed to items and chemicals that could cause her health. Additionally, the area has multiple children who do have these pre-existing health concerns. Furthermore, it is my belief and understanding that adding a concrete path could have devastating consequences to the local animals, nature, and flora. Moreover, the rezoning could lead to an increased risk of flooding in the presence of stormwater runoff, which could contain crushed concrete and bricks containing crystalline silica compounds, which could increase the risk of water pollution and harm to overall quality of the water supply, leading to damage of residents' organs. It would also lead to additional traffic and crime, turning a safe and isolated neighborhood where homeowners have purchased property with increased hazards to mental and physical safety. The zone would be surrounded by the neighborhoods of South 100 West, Smith Drive, right next door to the Church of Life, and the highway of 231. On the other side of 231 are several other residential dwellings less than 1 mile from the zone in question. It is our belief that existing zones provides for enough development and further commercial activity could threaten the character of the neighborhood. I and many others who signed the petition find that rezoning this area is highly immoral and unethical due to the health concerns involved and should not be recommended. Therefore, this facility may bring short-term gain, but in the terms of jobs, it should not be at the expense of the homeowners who reside there and the health of their loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
This is just a terrible idea.
Could I have your name and address, please?
So my name's Rich Trent, and I live at 1024 West 275 South. We're already dealing with a solid fill site. The gentleman that spoke in favor referred to it as a quarry, but it's a site where they accept solid fill dumping all day long, 5 or 6 days a week. There's dust on our properties. There's dust on everything. I have to wash the dust off my tomatoes after I pick them. So that's one of the things that's going on in the area, and that, it's been going on for quite a long time, and it's on the line between Lafayette and Shadeland, and I think Shadeland is allowing that to go on for the time being. And the woman who spoke before me was talking about the activity of the contractor that has a business on 25, and they have started on, there's a thin strip of land on the west side of 231 where they have started dumping and crushing concrete, and that's a nuisance also. It's noisy, it creates a lot of dust, and we really don't want to deal with that. We'd like to see this stopped, if at all possible. It's a residential area. The Lafayette side's all residential, and the Shadeland side is all residential, and we just don't need that industrial activity in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my name is Amy Corbin. I am right in the middle lot there of that rectangle that is right in the middle of looking at that field across the street. I mean, I'm like 16 South is where I live at. So I have questions about them saying that their conditions are appropriate because there's a quarry nearby, which is what you have to have for this type of facility. But are they trying to convince you guys that that's an active quarry? Because it is not. They haven't blasted in there and taken rocks out of there in a very, very long time. I don't know how many years. It's not even been active. All they do is dump trucks come in and put dirt there to fill it in. It's not an active quarry. It is a fill site. It's supposed to be filled in. I mean, are they asking to reactivate that quarry and start blasting over there again? That's what I want to know. I mean, are they implying that that's an active quarry? I just want to let you know that it is not. It's a fill site. So it does not go along with what they have told you that is appropriate for the way they're zoning it. You know what I mean? That was one of the requirements they needed, or you know what I mean? So, okay, I just wanted to mention that that's not an active quarry. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
My name's Ken Stacy. I live at 2428 South 100 West. I was the fellow that wrote the letter in opposition. I've lived out there now for 29 years. They cited Loft and Muskie's site down there as being a I3 or whatever.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, I'm going to interrupt you. If you wrote a letter, you're not allowed to speak. We have your letter.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I just want to, staff just wants to point out that the rules have been changed where people can speak if they submit a letter.
Good catch. I think. Well, I wouldn't want to be a rule breaker.
He's correct.
Okay. So.
It's all right. I like Matthew. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
My error, sir. That was my error.
Hi, I'm Terry Waymeyer. I actually live on Smith Drive. So 2533, but I've lived out there all my life. I'm 54. My parents bought a house on the corner in Smith Drive back in '69. So you say that they say they're going to use 275 as their entrance and exit. Well, that is a narrow entrance and exit anyway. And a lot of the neighborhood uses that to get to 231, to take their drive to work. And right now there is congestion from the traffic going in and out of the pit, which is not a quarry, again, like was stated. But there's congestion the way it is, and it does dirt up the road. But I have to say, the owner of that pit cleans that periodically with his own machine. So, you know, is that going to be done? Because I doubt it. Another concern that I have is about the airborne impurities. Like one stated earlier, it's not just your elderly that have issues with autoimmune diseases or whatsoever. They don't need to breathe that. Again, my parents live there, I live there, my grandchildren live in that area. There's a lot of concern about the dust and what we're going to be breathing in. It is cancerous. So, I don't think it's needed, and I hope that you all vote it down because, again, I want my grandchildren to grow up there and maybe have their children live out in that area. And it doesn't sound like if we vote this in that that's going to happen. It's a great neighborhood, even though the houses are older, but it's a great, quiet neighborhood. There's very little crime rate. People that move out there usually stay out there. So I hope you all vote to turn this down and not ruin our neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is August Holzhauer. I lived right across, if you're looking at that, where they're putting this thing, or want to put it. They're going to affect the homes on the opposite side, which would be the west side, but the people on the east side are going to get it. All those subdivisions, right along 231, we're getting stuff out of there right now from the company that owns the fill dirt and all this. They sell rock, they sell all of this on 25 at the corner. They're making mountains of dirt. They come in with chemicals, mixing it all the time. Manure trucks, mixing it. All we get is odor. We're on our patios, you can't breathe. You got to go back in your house. That should not even be allowed. This is ridiculous. If you're going to put this in a subdivision, how many people are going to get sick? How many people are going to die? Are you willing to do that? Think twice.
Anybody?
Good evening, everyone in the board and everyone in the audience. My name is James Cadwalder. I live at 2440 South 100 West. Let's see, there's a lot of information out there, so I tried to get on stuff that I know everybody's quoted stuff that they've read about the pollution and everything. I tried to get all my information from .gov government sites, and those sites are specifically the National Library of Medicine and the National Center for Biotechnology Information. I agree with all my neighbors in the city. We're concerned for our health. Concrete plants are known to emit sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, and carbon dioxide. We have 2 wells on the property. So we're concerned about water pollution and runoff. We actually own my family's owned the property since the 30s. We have 2 plots there. We farm 1. We do auto detailing on the other side. The auto detailing with the amount of dust would be virtually non-existent. We just had we just had our buildings and house power washed and painted and pole barns and everything, so that's something we'd have to do quite often if there's a concrete plant across the street. They're known to emit large amounts of VOCs, volatile organic chemicals, the same stuff in paint and spray bottles and everything like that. That causes breathing problems, liver cancer, kidney, brain disorders. Concrete plants, obviously living next to one, is shown to decrease the property values of all the other citizens that live nearby also. State Representative Nicole Collar from Fort Worth has filed a bill in her county that no concrete plants be built near schools, churches, or medical facilities because of all of the health concerns. Noise at concrete plants have been cited as high as 103 or over 103 decibels, so that's not something you want to hear at 4 o'clock in the morning, especially with residential houses nearby. The owners of this plant don't live next to a concrete plant. I don't think you want to live next to a concrete plant, neither does anyone else that has a residential zoning and lives within this. I don't think that the buffer zone is appropriate. It's just one street, and then our front yard literally starts directly across from that. I think we should put the residents and the health first over the zoning and the profits of companies. I think there were some great quotes from the city that this is a very dense residential area. This is not the norm, he said. I think that's important. His staff isn't concerned about the heavy industry. I think that's also important coming from him. I don't think the 20-foot buffer zone in the current proposal is vastly sufficient. That's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
My name's Terry Wilson. I live at 1012 West, 275 South. I was raised out there in this neighborhood. I raised my kids in this neighborhood, and my kids are now raising my grandchildren in this neighborhood. I have COPD. I don't live very far from the 100 West mark. I do not want to breathe this. I mean, I'm not the only one with the health issues. I don't want to repeat what everybody else has said. I just want to I just wanted to put that out there also. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Sharon Cadwalader, and I own property right across from this site, 2440 South 100 West. And I have put about $15,000 of improvements into that property, including painting of a large pole barn in the last year and a half, power washing, all kinds of improvements. So I'm really concerned about what that's going to do to my property living across from that. I'm also really concerned about the health impact that this is going to have for people. I grew up in that area, lived in that area for about 35 years. And so I really feel for these people that are going to be breathing this in. There was a study done by Dr. Crow in 2003 who said if you live from 5 to 15 miles within a site of a concrete plant like this, that you're at a high risk of danger as far as not just respiratory problems, but also heart problems. If you do a little research, you'll find out what these places are all about. So I'm not just concerned for me, but I'm concerned my parents built the home that is there in the pole barn, lived there all their lives, well, all their married lives. And I just hate to see this happen to our community. It's really a concern for me. So I'm anxious to see how you vote, whether it's the community that we're concerned about or whether it's the dollars and cents this may bring in or something else. So I thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, my name is Mario Rivera. My address is 2612 South 100 West. But I really am coming here to speak on behalf of 2606 100 West as well. 2 years ago, my parents bought that property, and we've been working on that property for the past 2 years, and I'm in the process, so I'm kind of in between two addresses, you could say. We've worked really hard on improving that house, spent a lot of money there, and the thought of losing the property value with a concrete plant going in right across the street, it's terrible. I think the gentleman that spoke in support is a little bit misleading in a couple of things. So when he says that there have been similar rezones in the past, that's not true. What's over there is more of a family shop, right? A family operation. It's not similar in any way. It doesn't produce the noise, the traffic, the pollution that this would produce. It's misleading to say that that's a similar rezone. I don't think that it's similar in any way. Also, he says that it's not going to affect 100 West. As you know, that 100 West leads to State Road 25, so that's often a shortcut that anybody takes if they're trying to get to that area. So if there's trucks coming from 25 or going down or going to 25, exiting on 25, they're probably going to take 100 West. So we're going to have concrete plants going in and out all day long. It's not what we want. What he also failed to mention is that between the similar rezoned properties, there's a tree line, so we can't see what's going on. It does kind of affect us. We can hear it. There's dust, but we can't see it. There's no similar tree line in between what they propose to build and our properties. The commitment doesn't make any sense. That pond is facing, again, the tree line. So I don't think there's any value, there's no protection, it's not doing anything for us because it's not facing the road, it's not in between the road and our properties, it's between a tree line. So you'd have to go out there and look, but that commitment does nothing to protect 100 West. If you look at page 49 of the report, of the staff here, which I appreciate the work. You folks did a great job on the staff. It says that a change in zoning from R1 to I3 is about as significant a change in zoning as possible. Right? I think that's a dramatic statement, and it's going to dramatically affect everyone who lives on 100 West. If you'll indulge me, the first page of the report here, if you see, there's a giant circle here. I'd like for you to think of that maybe as a fallout zone, right? And that's. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello. My name is Megan Smith. I live at 1014 West, 275 South. My parents live right next to me. My aunt and uncle live on the other side, and I have another aunt on the other side. I mean, generations have been out there. You know, we've grown up out there. The whole neighborhood knows each other. To say that they're family too, I mean, we all know each other. We're trying to raise our kids out there, but not at the expense of their health. You know, we don't want that around there. What's going to happen to our property? You know, the value is going to go down. You know, we already deal with so much noise out there, like other people have said too. We already deal with dust. The roads are constantly dirty from the trucks going down there already. They're not cleaned regularly. We get our car washed, and it's pointless, you know. My mother has COPD, which she just told you about. You know, we don't want to breathe this. This is residential. We just don't want to see this here. And just like the gentleman said before, just think about this being in your backyard when you vote today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Rebuttal from Crossroads.
Yeah, I'll try to get through these pretty quickly. Willie Hall with Crossroad Engineers, 115 North 17th Avenue, Beech Grove, Indiana. And thank you again for hearing us today. I think I got down everything. With the first remonstrator, again, about not following the rules, we'll follow all regulations in development of site, so City of Lafayette. But more so than that, it's also IDEM. Like I said, these will be a new plant. There'll be a new dust collector. All these plants do have to be signed off and continually permitted through IDEM for air quality concerns. So this is nothing new for IMI. They have plants all over the state of Indiana and surrounding states. They'll continue to maintain and operate the site in accordance with their permits. IMI also, again, this is not atypical for them. So there's many areas around the state where there is a similar characteristic of the neighborhood where there is a mix in use that they're located in. IMI will routinely try to be neighborly, right, and try to hear concerns and resolve concerns. They'll continue to do that here. Also, just a reminder too that, you know, the traffic patterns were discussed quite a bit on some of these and not 100 West. I mean, the site is located off 275. We spoke with the City of Lafayette in a pre-filing meeting. They talked to us about a couple improvements that are probably going to be required with improved turn lanes in to the single access drive.
and maybe A-cell, D-cell will comply with all those. The traffic is going to go out to 231. Concrete plants are not heavy volume producers when it talks about traffic, right? Peak hour, they don't contribute to the peak hour production or peak hour traffic volumes like a lot of users do. So as far as other improvements, like I said, there's traffic studies going on. We'll continue to work with the City of Lafayette and with NDOT right there too for any improvements that we have to do. Everything will follow the rules and regulations. A lot of talk about the health concerns. Again, I mean, all these fit into the category of IMI is not a new concrete plant. They're not a new user across the state of Indiana. They keep up on their air quality permits, and they have to. A reminder that it's not a cement production facility. It's a concrete ready mix. Materials are brought in from trucks, housed in silos, used in drum mixers, and they're all electric mixers, right? They're not gas powered. They're all electric. Mindful of the environment. The development of the environment and meeting IDEM water quality permits and City of Lafayette water quality permits, detention and water quality will be met on site. Again, concrete plants in general just aren't one-off uses. They're common and they interact with their communities. There was a discussion, that same one, about flooding. Again, we will detain on site to all City of Lafayette standards. So peak rate control and water quality control off the site, which is TSS, or total suspended solid reduction and removals. 80% of that will be removed as the state dictates and local agencies dictate. The next one, our mistake on calling it the quarry, the dumping site to the south, that the companion use indication was more so just the existing use of the area, not that we are going to, it's not IMI's quarry or dumping site. There's no activating that as a quarry. They don't need it to be a concrete plant. They're not going to rely on that, the operation as a quarry. So the dumping site, it still remains what our point was, that it is something that is industrial in nature. It's not a residential use across the street. It does generate much of the same use that we're petitioning here today. Again, there was also the statement about the quarry, and that no plans to activate a quarry to operate the site. They don't need that. We did respond to Mr. Stacy that had came up but elected not to speak. A lot of that letter was about traffic and traffic safety. We responded with the same thing, that that was a commitment that we brought forward in the first application to have one access. Conversation with staff had shown that we cannot make that. Okay, we'll wrap it up. Maybe the last thing, if I could, is this is a managed site, right? All IMI concrete plants are managed sites, and they use their trucks. So they will have on-site attendants, right? They have staff members on site. They do not employ other company trucks. They haul their own material. So operation of the site, you know who it is. Drivers, you know who it is. That will be a maintained site. So again, we thank you, and we appreciate the chance and request a positive recommendation moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board?
In the commitment, there's nothing that says this has to stay a concrete mixing plant, right? Or am I wrong?
We are making a formal commitment for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be, but it will be zoned I3, and maybe I missed it in here because there's a lot of stuff in here. There's nothing that says if you guys are out of business, it can't be sold and reused as an I3 for all the uses that an I3 is, or am I wrong about that? Can someone help me understand that?
Yeah, we read the commitment as excluding all other I3 uses and allowing only the two that they're calling for.
And the commitment goes with the property.
And I also have a question about the commitment. The additional 20 feet of buffer yard, that's on top of a normal requirement of a buffer yard between R1 and I3, correct?
There is no required buffer yard on 100 West because it fronts a road right-of-way.
Oh.
So there actually is no required buffer yard there.
Oh.
And I'll throw it out there. We did the 20-foot because it fit in one of the classifications of the county standards. IMI is not opposed to 30-foot as was located in the staff report. And just for everybody's knowledge, a buffer yard also is not just a separation, right? There will be tree plantings in there. So we have I think it's a type B buffer yard, which has evergreens, deciduous, shrubs. It will be a mounded buffer yard with a very large number of trees planted along that road. The same thing on 275. You can put the mounding, that can be tree planted, and then all the other buffer yards around the site, the 30-foot buffer yards that are required around the two other portions of the site will be trees, shrubs as well.
You mentioned, I think in your last statement or on the rebuttal, that there was a commitment about the access, and I think I might be missing that in the commitment.
Yeah, it was the first commitment letter that we tried to submit with our application, and we found out through staff that there's a limited amount of things that we can commit to, and that was not one of the things that we could commit to. We are committed to that. That is where the access will be. We're happy to commit to that if we can formally do that and sign that. But the site plan that's not again, I know that we're not held to that, but that's not a one-off site plan. That was done through iterations. That's the actual concrete plant, and that's the actual drive location.
Thank you. And then one, just because recycling, crushing, stockpiling, can you explain the operation a little bit to me?
It's a continuation of the property east. So it's aggregate. It's not recycling of metals and such, I don't believe. It's more crushing concrete, stockpiling aggregate, those kind of things.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, again, you have a ballot on the commitment and you have a ballot on the rezone. And so somewhere on your ballot indicate which is which, please. Commitment, rezone.
Commitment,
Commitment,
rezone.
rezone.
Good catch, Austin.
I'm looking for those letters that were passed around.
Oh,
David? I think all the rest of them are there. Those are all commitment. Resale.
Okay. For the commitment, there is 6 no votes. And 8 yes votes for the rezoning ballot. 11 no votes and 3 yes votes.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any administrative issues? I have none. There are no subdivisions filed, so we don't have an agenda to approve. Determination of variances.
I move the following requests for variance from Unified Zoning Ordinance are not requests for use variance prohibited from consideration by ordinance and statute. Those would be BZA 2120 Ariel Tingle and BZA 2125 Almost Home Humane Society Incorporated by David Bowman, President.
A second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Director's report.
Thank you. The director's report was emailed out this morning. I don't have anything to add, but we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none. Any citizens' comments or grievances? Hearing none, I will take a motion.
I move to adjourn.
We're adjourned.